I don't want to share someone else's thoughts. I want to create my own original thoughts. I want to create my own original solutions. I want to look at situations and come up with my own phrasing, my own words, and do it my way.
This is the Jon Taffer Podcast.
Shut it down!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Jon Taffer Podcast. I am, of course, Jon Taffer, and this is a really exciting podcast for me. You know, I got a chance to take a couple weeks off, and now Tuesday I go back into production for Bar Rescue. We're doing 3 more episodes, and I didn't have time to do a normal podcast this week, so I thought to myself, Corey, what could we do that's really, really special? And I thought to myself, pandemic is ending. Things are getting pretty excited right now.
Yeah. Cities
are getting busy. This is a time to talk about winners. So I thought to myself, why don't we dedicate this week's podcast to winners? And let's play some great clips of some of the best winners that we've had on this podcast. And I mean winners in every type of arena you can. And I want to start with my dear buddy, Dave Portnoy. You know, I met Dave Portnoy about 10 years ago when I did something called Blog Rescue on the Barstool Sports site. Back then, Barstool Sports was a bunch of people all around the country. Big Cat was Barstool, Chicago. Dave Portnoy was Barstool, Massachusetts. And there was Barstool, New York, and Barstool, LA, and they were spread all over the country. But Dave had a vision. He had a vision. It started with a really sports betting newsletter. But this wasn't easy. Dave got up at 4 in the morning, went to the subways in Boston to hand out that newsletter to build a brand for himself. Well, if you Google it right now, Dave's worth about $120 million.
Yeah, I'd say he got it done.
So that 4 in the morning paid off, didn't it?
Yeah.
And he took Barstool and turned it into one of the most successful media platforms in America. And he did it in a completely unconventional way. He did it his way. Now, my wife always says to me, John, you did it your way. Well, I think I did. But there's a lesson to be learned in this. We don't have to all fit in a box. We can reinvent that box, and Dave did. Dave built a business on internet and content unlike any other, and he did it a day at a time, from pizza reviews to all sorts of other content, and now he's one of the most successful in America at it. I had a chance in one of my first podcasts to bring Dave on the show, of course, who's an old friend, and really got to talk to Dave about things other people don't talk about with him. We didn't talk about pizza. We didn't talk about sports.
Right.
We didn't talk about Justin Bieber, who I don't even want to get into because Dave and I fight about that all the time. We talked about Dave and Dave's beginnings and how it all came together. Give a listen. Okay, so you formed Barstool Sports. Now, you and I have something in common. I created Bar HQ, my app, and what I did before I built it is I sold all the advertising to Anheuser-Busch in advance, and then I used their money to build my app, and then I sold it. Sound familiar?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the key, and why so many things in my industry, the media, you know, it's great to have these ideas and concepts, but if you can't sell it and you're not willing to be the person on the phone, you know, doing the deal, how are you going to survive? So I had an advantage over people doing what I was doing in that I really came at it much stronger from the business. It wasn't, hey, I want to be a journalist and write funny stories. It was, how do I make a business? How do I make this work? And that was the sales. The newspaper, when I launched it, I was the only employee, and it would say to contact, sales, do Joe at Barstool Sports. If you want to contact PR, contact Bill at Barstool Sports. I had all these aliases so people would think we were much bigger than we actually were.
So the fact of the matter is, being an entrepreneur means you got to knock on doors, make the phone calls. It didn't frickin' come easy, did it?
No, and I'm sure you know this. This is one thing. A lot of people love talking about being an entrepreneur, but not everybody wants to do, the heavy lifting that's involved in it. Now, don't get me wrong. I would rather do nothing else. I had no problem waking up. I used to wake up at 5 a.m. every single day, hand out the newspapers at the subway. I would go home. I would write my articles and stuff like that. And then I'd head back to the subway to hand out the newspapers again. I used to deliver them all myself. It was like a 48-hour paper route where I'd stick them in a van and just drop them off nonstop. It was a bear. I mean, I didn't take a day off for 10 years, but it was the best 10 years, and it beat the hell out of when I was working for somebody else before that. But it's a lot of work, but you got to love it, and I did.
So the fact of the matter is it didn't happen overnight. You had to work your butt off to make it happen. And then you started to associate yourself with a number of people around you, and you grew out across the country. So you started cash flowing, and then you really invested back into the business.
Yeah, so, we started in 2004, and I'd say around 2007, 2008, I was starting to finally say, all right, I may not be rich doing this, but I'm going to be able to carve a living doing something that I enjoy, working for myself. And that was the primary goal when I started it. But as Boston started taking off, I said, if I can replicate this in other cities, I may really have something. So we started looking for other guys. We found Kevin Clancy in New York, Dan Big Cat, who you obviously know well in Chicago. Yeah. We found Smitty in Philadelphia. So we started expanding to other cities, trying to replicate the model of what we had here in Boston.
Now, these weren't aliases. These were actually people. These weren't all coming to you. Yeah.
Real people. Real people.
So now
full-time salaries.
So now, absolutely. Now you got salaries, you got benefits, you got all this stuff to worry about. You're a multi-city operation. At that point, or at what point did you realize that you had a multi-million-dollar venture on your hands? Was there ever a moment when you said, holy shit, look at what I've created?
It was 2010. So we had always only done physical events in Boston, the city of Boston. And I wanted to test. I wanted to see how we doing outside just Metro Boston. So we wanted to do a tour of local colleges, UMass, URI. We went to Quinnipiac. We went to UNH, New Hampshire. And I needed a sponsor for it. And all of our sponsors at the time, our advertisers, were for the most part beer companies, liquor companies, and they wouldn't put their name on just doing a party. So I said, well, how can we make it so Southern Comfort or Coors Light can advertise or sponsor this tour? I decided music because, the beer companies will put their name on concerts. So we found a local artist and said, we're doing a concert tour. It was 6 cities. And when we went to these other schools, they were hanging our signs in their windows. We were supposed to do these concerts at venues, like 500 cap bar venues. The Mullins Center at UMass, that's where they play basketball. Yeah. They called me up and they said, hey, Dave, we're getting basically requests for this concert. And we don't know what they're talking about, but we think there's demand for this, for you to move it from a bar to the actual arena. And we worked out the finances and all that. We put the tickets on sale. It was just the floor of the arena, which was 4,000 people. And we sold out in about an hour. That was an eye-opening experience.
So that was because, I've had those experiences. Sometimes we don't realize how big our brands are. Like even this podcast, the success of this podcast sort of blew me away because it happened so quickly. It's amazing when you have those moments when you realize, wow, this is bigger than I thought. All righty. So Dave Portnoy left us all with, to me, memorable thoughts. Tough, starting a business, believing in it, fighting it through, getting up early, going to sleep late, building it, getting better and better and better. Dave did that, and he became the king of the internet. But think, it all started with one piece of content, and it grew and it grew and it grew. Well, my next guest is a real buddy. Rick Harrison and I are both Las Vegas boys. We hang out together all the time. As a matter of fact, you're going to see Rick in an upcoming episode of Bar Rescue.
Oh, okay.
Rick Harrison owns a silver and gold pawn shop here in Las Vegas, and you all know him as Rick from Pawn Stars. Rick, too. Rick wanted to be in television, and everybody told him no. It wasn't a fluke. A TV producer didn't walk into the pawn shop and say, guys, let's make a television show. It didn't happen that way. Rick came up with the idea, the format. It took him 3 years to get the show on television. Wow. Working it, fighting for it, repitching it. It did not come easy. But now Pawn Stars is one of the most successful reality shows on TV. I believe he's in 4,000 channels around the country and around the world in about 9 different languages. Rick is a really interesting guy to me. He knows American history inside out. Every card of Rick's has a quote from a founding father on the back. Oh. So he's really into American history. Yeah. He's really into American artifacts. That comes out on the show. But Rick is a businessman. He's an entrepreneur in a classic sense. And that's what came out when I had a chance to spend time with Rick Harrison. Give a listen. Because of your love of artifacts and history, you have a real appreciation for what everybody brings to the store, which comes through on TV big time. I mean, your eyes light up when you see some of these things.
I really do love this stuff. I am a super nerd. Okay, I mean, I've had huge name celebrities call me up and going like, who's this? Because to this day, I just read every night. I don't watch television. I tell people television is like hot dogs. You really like it till you see how it's made.
Good point. We know that well, don't we?
Yeah.
So what's amazing to me is how I see this really just starting with this book and this mentality of yours to schemes and make money, your love of making the money, going into eBay, doing business with pawn shops, suddenly going to the pawn shop business. Is that a tough business to go into? Did you make money right away?
Well, at first, it was really difficult because, like in a pawn shop, when you first start, money's just going out on loans and not a lot coming in. And there's a ton of stuff you got to know, and it's really there's.
Do you have to capitalize it yourself in your business, or will a bank work with you in the beginning?
It's definitely hard to get cap financing with it.
It's high risk.
Well, not only that, you can't get a small business loan for it because SBA will not loan you money if you're going to loan it to someone else.
Oh,
it's a little loop. It's a pawn. It's not
right. You're not allowed to relend.
It's they don't want a whitewater situation.
Yep. Well, that makes sense. You can't argue with them for that. So that's fascinating. So now you open a pawn shop and you start looking at these things and you start giving people money.
Yeah.
Was that a little scary in the beginning?
It was, because my dad had a little coin shop, bought and sold stuff, had a jewelry store. It was difficult. There's always people always trying to scam you. There's 1,000,001 little things you have to know. And I know I used to have to go to the library every Saturday and like research stuff because remember back then there wasn't an internet.
Right. So wow. So you'd sit in the library and that's how you'd learn about these
I'd
things.
learn all kinds of stuff. I remember once I bought I knew they were photograves. It's an expensive photo process way back in the day of American Indians, and so I bought some. I bought some for like $50 a piece because I had no idea what they were. The lady didn't have, and then it turns out they were Edward Curtis photograves, and all the negatives were in the Smithsonian. I did really, really well on that. I just knew for a fact that anything old American Indian was worth money, and like I said, I made money off that because I had read books that's worth money, and my entire life, I love to read, and I don't read fiction. It's just really, really boring history and physics and things.
I'm
like
like you. I read a lot of biographies. I love the human condition and reading about people, and fantasy just doesn't work for me so much.
Yeah.
So okay, you got the pawn shop. You're making a couple of bucks. You're doing. Was there one transaction where you said to yourself, you went home that night and said, okay, this is freaking working now. This is. Is there one moment that you can remember when you realized to yourself, wow, this is working?
Yeah, it was. I remember when because from the get go, I mean, there was like you take all the big pawn shops in this town anyway. They're owned by massive chains. Like Easy Corp's got like 1,000 stores. Cash America's got like 1,000 stores. I couldn't compete against Walmart, so I had to be Tiffany's.
Right.
Yeah, and I remember.
But you had a good location.
Yeah, and I remember. The problem, one thing that I knew I was so much better than all the other people is when a guy came in with a 1930s. Now I'm having a German camera.
Leica?
Yeah, Leica. Yeah,
yeah. Hasselblad.
A 1930s Leica, great shape and everything like that. Yeah, we wanted to borrow $1,000. I'm saying, yeah, no problem. He goes, I just been to 4 pawn shops, and they said they don't take these things.
But you saw the money.
Oh yeah, and then and early on I said, you know what, I always want the place immaculately clean. I want like at least 1 or 2 Picassos or Renoirs on the wall. I mean, this is going to be different than any other pawn shop.
So you positioned yourself. It was very strategic, actually.
Yeah.
Did you realize you were being strategic back then?
I wanted to be better than the rest. I wanted people walk to my pawn shop. They knew what I was. They knew I was honest. They knew what I was doing, and. In the end, that's why I was just so much better than all the other ones. I knew what I was doing, and I had a better play.
Also, you became an expert, respected. So people know if they had something, they should bring it to you.
Yeah.
Because, you have the knowledge base to give, what the hell is this, Rick?
Yeah.
I went to you with some stuff that I found, and your answers and knowledge is remarkable. So why would I bring it to anyone else? It makes no sense. Oh, boy. So Rick became a real buddy after that interview. We became great friends, and we talk all the time, and it's fun to have a friend who's also in the television business that, we can share experiences with and sort of help each other out. And, here we are, Corey. We're in our brand new podcast studio.
We are. I'm pretty excited.
You know what I like? I'm not sitting in that bar stool anymore. I'm like comfortable here, buddy. I can cross my legs.
Kind of like a cigar lounge.
Yeah, nice soft velvet chair here. But, podcasts should be conversational. They should be relaxing. So we redesigned our podcast studio to create more of a living room environment. So rather than us sitting around a desk, we're now sort of hanging out in a living room, and it's a really relaxed and great environment. So good work, Corey. New studio is great. My next guest is a completely different story from anybody else. Daniel grew up in Toronto, and one day he decided he wanted to be a professional poker player. So he worked and worked and worked and saved up about $4,000. Okay. Flew to Las Vegas, Nevada, sat down at a poker table, and commenced to get his ass kicked in a matter of hours, was out of money. He then flew back to Toronto with the last dollars that he had, moved in with his parents, and really started studying poker. And he realized that his passion for poker did not overcome his lack of knowledge of poker. So Daniel has taught me how to play poker, and I've had an opportunity to sit at a poker table with him. It's incredible, the psychology and reading of body language and depth of knowledge you have to have about voice inflections, body language, and the mechanics and the odds of the game. It's remarkable to see a world-class poker player really play poker as it should be done. Well, a couple of years ago, Daniel didn't do so bad. He brought in $34 million in 1 year playing poker. Again, how many people wake up in the morning and say, I want to be a poker player? Just like Dave Portnoy, just like Rick Harrison, Daniel thought out of the box and went into his own direction and became one of the greatest poker players in America. Listen to the conversation that Daniel and I had.
Well, I was always a competitive person, and being skinny and short didn't leave me a lot of options to play in the NBA or the NHL. So poker was luckily enough a game for me where that wasn't a negative. It was all about brain power, and I was drawn to it very early.
So you're really into gambling, and so you started playing in competitive environments, a lot of charity events and stuff. And then, as I understand it, your bankroll grew. You were 1 credit away from finishing high school, and you literally packed your bags and went to Vegas. Is that true?
Yeah, it might have been more like 3 or 4 credits. We're not exactly sure. I haven't seen my high school report in quite a while. But, essentially, I started out as a pool player and then was introduced to poker. And, we were playing in these charity casinos in Toronto that were rampant all over the city. And I started to play Monday to Friday, noon to 8, almost like a real job. And at the time, I was about a 17, 18-year-old or so, I was making about $45 an hour and felt like, this was going to be what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And school just at the time, got in the way. So I left school, didn't even finish because I didn't see the need at the time. And, then I made my first trip to Vegas, and it was an eye-opener.
Wow. So you go to Vegas, and now you're playing it with a whole different league of play. I want my listeners to understand that you knew what you wanted to do at a young age. This was your passion. If you closed your eyes when you were 12 years old and pictured your future, would this be it?
Well, when I was 12 years old, I thought, acting, writing, something in the film world would be where I was at. And then my life took a turn, in another way, and I found poker, which satisfied my competitive urges in a real big way. And I sort of became a big fish in a small pond of Toronto, where I was one of the best players here. And quickly I learned that, in Vegas, the locals there, they've seen a lot of hometown heroes come and go, at the time. And for a lot of them, I was just another hometown hero. And it was certainly like a different caliber of play. It's like trying to hit in the, if you play a minor league baseball and you're hitting, 30 home runs against slower pitching, but all of a sudden they're throwing the ball 10, 15 miles faster. And all of a sudden and their curveballs are sharper and their placement is better. And you're like, hey, wait a minute. This isn't as easy as I would have thought. So it was definitely humbling my first couple trips to Vegas.
Now, I know this stuff has been published, and I normally wouldn't ask somebody a question like this, but I know it's been published, and I'd like my audience to understand the magnitude of your ability in poker. Would you tell us approximately what your lifetime winnings are in poker?
So in tournaments themselves, it's about $40 million. That doesn't include cash games or anything like that. It also doesn't, so it's in tournaments, which is all that really is recorded. It's about $40 million, and I've been number one on that list for most of my career. Just recently, a kid named Justin Bonomo passed me, winning a big event. But so now I sit at number 2, and but I'm certainly happy with the career that I've had.
Yeah, you should be, buddy. So you moved to Vegas. Now you start playing in the big games. Did you start winning right away? Did you have any rude awakenings? Did you have any second thoughts? Because now you packed up, you go to Vegas. You're sitting there as the hometown hero. You're playing with the other guys who are thinking they can chew you up. What was that experience like, Dan?
Oh, I did not win early. So I went there with about $3,500. And about 24 hours later, I was in Las Vegas for the very first time watching people play poker because my bankroll was gone. I remember it vividly. It was a different animal playing against players that pushed back. In Toronto, I was kind of a bull, and I ran people over. Well, these guys, they knew how to defend against that. So I remember the very first time when I realized I was a sucker was a time where it was about 4 a.m., and I, lost my last chips. I went to the bathroom, washed my hands, walked out, and the 7 players I was playing with had all left immediately. So I realized in that moment, like, oh my goodness, like they were playing because of me. I was a sucker in the game. And I remember that being like a very motivating moment in my life where I was like, I wanted revenge on every one of them. And I knew that in order to do that, I was going to have to go back to Toronto, rebuild my bankroll, and improve and continue to learn and get better.
Daniel's unbelievable. Talk about thinking out of the box and pursuing a unique career. Daniel believed in himself. He got the knowledge, and now he's a complete winner. When I come back, we're going to revisit some time I spent with Sway Calloway.
Don't shut down this podcast. Jon Taffer will be right back.
Corey, we got to talk about this company. Big Ass Fans, BAF we call them. They're all over the Vegas airport and restaurants, schools, gyms, military bases, everywhere around here. And it seems like you can't get away from them. And they don't just do big-ass fans. They're the best fans for your house and patio. And they even have these evaporative coolers that are perfect for places like Las Vegas and maybe where you are during the summer, too. If you haven't seen them, check them out. Go check the website. You'll never guess the name of the website, Corey. BigAssFans.com. So check it out, BigAssFans.com. That's bigassfans.com. So, Corey, when I opened up Taffer's Tavern, I didn't want TVs with guys sitting behind desks all day. I wanted great video programming. So I chose Atmosphere TV. Atmosphere TV is home to 40-plus content channels, including their flagship channel, Chive TV. It's built for your business and proven to keep your customers sitting, eating, drinking, and spending more money. You can find Atmosphere in thousands of bars and restaurants nationwide, and their service remains 100% free for business use. So just text Taffer to 474747 or head over to Atmosphere TV, atmosphere.tv, and use the discount code Taffer to receive your device 100% free today. That's atmosphere.tv, atmosphere.tv. Sway is another good buddy. I've been on his radio show a bunch of times. Sway started in the old MTV days.
That's right.
And you think about all the VJs, they were called back then, that were in MTV that are gone. But Sway isn't. Sway has a very powerful show and very powerful presence in the urban marketplace. He took his exposure from MTV and built it into a national brand that has sustained itself for all of these years. And, I think Sway has done it simply by being Sway. He's incredibly authentic, incredibly real, a lot of fun, really smart, but Sway, too, thought out of the box, just like Daniel did, just like Rick did, and just like Dave did. And his thinking out of the box and his creativity led him to an unbelievable career. My conversation with Sway was really eye-opening for me. Give a listen. How old were you?
In the late 80s, early 90s, hip-hop have kind of really became, at least in our circles, in our community, that became a mainstay. It became a major thread. And it was interesting because it was like, while mainstream America was, talking about, whatever was on the top of the mind at that time, which really wasn't representative of what was going on in our lives in East Oakland, you had hip-hop that was telling a whole totally different story about the world abroad, about the community, about the country, about the consciousness of the people in my environment. So when I was coming up, I was trying to really find a way of just getting things off my chest as a young man in Oakland, and rap became the best way to do it.
So how old were you when you started on Pier 39?
When I was, I actually came to Pier 39 13, 14, and friends of mine who were in a breakdancing crew called Flynamic Force were actually breaking on that pier and making money. And I would see them over there making money and entertaining. And when we got in high school, those same friends, we decided to form a rap group because breaking had kind of died down a little bit. This was in the late 80s.
Yep.
And it just seemed like the natural progression was to form a rap group. We already had the entertaining prowess. For me, John, I'm going to tell you the honest to God truth. It was when I was growing up, I thought I wanted to be somebody who studied culture and history. I wanted to go into archaeology. And then I liked natural sciences. This is all in elementary. By the time I was in junior high, I thought I wanted to go into athletics because I ran track. When I was in high school, I thought, man, perhaps I want to go into law, and I want to go to Hastings Law School in Northern California. But none of these things that I thought I could do, I don't think I really committed to or believed that I could actually do it just because of the environment I was in. I hadn't conquered that the ability to just kind of not mentally get in my own way. And I got sidetracked with hip-hop.
So when I was young, I loved archaeology, and I took cultural anthropology courses and stuff. I loved that shit. So you were really into cultures and history and trying to understand why we all are the way we are. That was something that was important to you.
Exactly. That was important to me. And I thought, here's the thing for me, what rap did when I first started hearing groups like Run DMC, or I heard groups like NWA or the Ghetto Boys, what fascinated me about those groups was they were giving me an inside view of Houston when it came to the Ghetto Boys and what they liked in Houston, the kind of foods they ate, the kind of cars they drove, the kind of clothes they wore, their slang, all of these different things went from. I learned about L.A. through NWA, and them talking about, the police relationships with the community, talking about, the court system, talking about gang life. We didn't have gangs where I was from in Oakland, so we learned about Crips and Bloods. When I listened to groups like Tribe Called Quest, I learned about Queens, New York. I thought New York was just one big place. So hip-hop for me became a teacher. And
it opened
that's
your mind.
what I think drew me closer to the culture was being this teacher. So when I started rapping, I also wanted to teach. And the things I wanted to teach people about was injustice and talk about global politics and then talk about local politics. And then also I want to hold true to the traditions of hip-hop, to be an innovator, to have your own voice, to have your own look. Don't do anything like anybody else did, or you would be a biter. You would be a follower,
Yeah.
And so when I start pursuing the rap thing, we made some local success, my partner King Tech and I, and we kept the group name Flynamic Force from when the breakdancing era. We just transferred it to the rap group, and it forced me to learn about. I was trying to get a record deal. I couldn't get a record deal. The majority of the business was in New York. I was in the Bay Area. And so it forced us to learn how to do things independently. And by doing so, we started taking courses on how to manage, how to market, how to distribute in the music business, how to manufacture, how to package, how to brand. And we learned where to make the lacquers, that creates the prototype wax that you use, that they burn all the other wax so you can create singles from it. We learned how to make cassette tapes, and we learned how to make DVDs. What we also learned was that... Go ahead.
So, Sway, you understood that show business was business. You got that at a young age.
And I learned it the hard way. I learned it by getting doors shut in my face. I learned it by not finding a company that had enough faith in what we were doing to invest and sign us as a group. I learned it by having the only outlet of getting this done or having my music being heard is to do it myself. which at that time seemed unlikely and not available, but we learned that it was likely and we learned that it was available.
Well, I might have saved the best one for last. Not that it's a better interview, but Dana White is one interesting guy. So Dana White, years ago, bought UFC for about $12 million, the entire company. And when he bought it for $12 million, he started building it up and changing it and molding it and turning it into a real company. It now has about 4,000 fighters in UFC. They have fights all over the world. And Dana White has built his company from $12 million, I hope you're all sitting down, to about $2.5 billion. Jeez. And he did it also by thinking out of the box and having the confidence to believe in his own vision. I've had the chance to hang with Dana. I've had the chance to be in Dana's offices. You know, I had the chance to sit in this programming room at UFC, which was incredible. You were with me, Corey.
Yeah, we have some video. I'll roll some clips.
Great, and it was it was a strictly white room with a sofa in it. All the walls were white, and there was writing all over the walls. And in this room, they would write all the bouts. You know, Corey Sudbury versus Jon Taffer, Joe Blow versus Peter Smith, and everything was being matched up. And then the fighters that had the highest social media scores or engagement or audiences had a red star next to their name.
Oh, wow.
So if you didn't have a big social following, they would not pair you against another fighter who had no social following. They had to build the brand. So every fight had to have one fighter at least that had a big social following. Now, if you're a fighter in UFC and you want to be successful, you better darn well develop a social following, or Dana White's not going to be so interested in you because you're not helping him build his brand. So Dana had a vision of having the fighters actually leverage their social media to help build the UFC brand, and boy, did it work. Talking with Dana was very, very enlightening to me. Give a listen to this interview. I want to see what you think.
Yeah, it's been a crazy, wild, fun ride, and I'm so in love with the fight business. And you know, I was able to start from scratch and build something exactly the way that I wanted to do it. So it's been fun.
Well, never do you see a business that's a greater extension of the person who runs it personality than UFC.
Yeah, right.
So you know, you've done a great job creating something that is the vision that you had. So I want to go back a lot of years.
Okay.
So when you grew up, when you were really young, what was your dream in life? What did you want to be?
You know what's crazy is that I've been lucky in life with a lot of things, but the thing that I would say is the most is this is what I've always wanted to do.
So you always want to be in a fight game of some way?
100%, my whole life. And I think I say this all the time. You know, the toughest thing in life is figuring out what you want to do. What are you here for? What were you meant to do? What is your purpose in life? And I think that, you know, when you're real young, everybody tells you that if you don't go to college, you're never going to amount to anything. Mm-hmm. And if you go to any college anywhere in the world and you ask kids, what's your major? Well, I'm majoring in political science, but I'm thinking about switching over to, they're at college because they were told they had to go to college.
English literature.
Yes. Any of that stuff. History.
Philosophical.
But they don't know what they want to do. Yeah. They're not following whatever they're passionate about. You know how many people told me when I told them back in the day, you know, I'm sure you heard the story. If you haven't, I was a bellman in a hotel.
Yes.
I was 18, 19
and
years old.
And a doorman.
Yeah. And made good money, great money, especially for that age. I'm 18, 19 years old. And you got full health benefits, 401k, all the things that you think you want out of life. But I was like, this isn't me. This isn't what I want to do. I want to be in the fight business. And people are like, that's ridiculous. That's
so
stupid.
When you said you wanted to be in the fight business, did you envision yourself as a fighter, as a manager, as a promoter?
I think that, you know, when you're young, like I was, of course you want to be a fighter. Some people have it and some people don't. I obviously didn't have it, or, you know, you'd have heard of me then. But, you know, but I just wanted to be in the fight game. And that was my goal. And when you know exactly what you want to do, you basically wake up every day and you work toward that goal.
You know, I've never seen a sport that requires more discipline
Yeah,
than
it's
fighting.
true. It's
You know,
true.
I've never told the story. Years ago, I used to run Grossingers in the Catskill Mountains, which was a big 1,200-acre resort. And we had a boxing ring, and we would host the world champion. And they would come. So when I ran the hotel, Michael Spinks trained
Yeah.
there, Kenny Norton trained there. And they would come and they would stay in a hotel for 18 weeks. And they'd work out for 18 weeks.
Yeah.
And every afternoon at 2:30, they would spar for the hotel guests. And I was, a young executive running a hotel. I have never seen discipline to diet, training, regimen. And I've seen NFL athletes train. I've seen all others. So when you commit to fighting and want to be a fighter, then you must be incredibly disciplined.
Yeah. Not only that, they're built different than any other human beings on earth.
So do you consider yourself a disciplined guy?
Yeah, I would say that I am, especially with the business and with the game. I have a routine that I do every day, and one of the things that I've learned in my life now is everything in life is about consistency. It's about being consistent. You get up every day and you consistently do what it takes to build your business and to, for me, grow the sport.
Yeah. So you started young. And from the hotel, how did you get into the fighting game? So you always thought of yourself as going there. So to you, the hotel job was temporary.
Right. Well, it's no different than college. If you do go to college and you know what you want to do, you figure out what classes you have to take and what you have to do, and what's my path to get here. So there was this street fighting legend, and he was a boxer too, in Boston, and his name was Peter Welsh. So I said, I never met him, didn't know him, heard tons of stories about him. So I literally quit this job, right? I quit my job, walked out of work that day and quit, and I started looking for this guy.
Wow.
And I was looking for him for about 2 weeks.
For what purpose? For him to manage you? For him?
So I went up to this guy, and I said, I know you don't know me from a hole in the wall, but my name's Dana White, and I want to learn everything about the fight business, and I want to learn from you. I want to work for you, work under you, whatever you need me to do, and I want to learn. And as crazy as that sounds, going to this guy, he said yes.
Wow.
Took me in, and that was it. From that day on, it went just like this, straight up.
So A, courage to ask.
Yep.
B, I'm guessing you would have done it for free. You would have done it for anything.
I did
at
it
that
for
point.
free for a long time. Yeah,
Wow.
I did it for free for a long time, and you have to figure but it's no different than being a college student, right? When you're in college, you have to figure out how to pay for school, your living costs. What am I going to do? What classes am I going to take? I looked at it the same way. I looked at it as my college.
So you were very strategic, even as a young guy.
Exactly. Yeah,
So you go up to him. You're a young punk.
Yep.
You go up to this legend.
Yep.
And you ask him to take you under his wings. Why did he do it? What do you think he saw in you?
I don't know.
Was it tough? Was it commitment?
Well, the thing is that when I was with him, if you asked him today, I worked hard with him. Worked hard, and we did a lot of different things together. And then I ended up coming out here to Vegas, basically with the knowledge that Peter Welsh had given me.
So now you got not only your discipline, not only your passion, now you got some knowledge.
Well,
so now you come to Vegas.
Well, the other thing I used to do is I also used to go either to libraries or bookstores, and I would read all about marketing, sports marketing, PR. I would read all these different business, all these different things that I would read. And
don't you wish other athletes would read those things?
Yes, I do.
Every athlete's a brand builder.
I literally just walked out of a meeting when I came in here. That's why I was a couple minutes late for you. I walked out of a meeting where we're talking about these fighters that we have under contract. Yeah. And everybody, all these fighters have managers, right? And the fighter themselves do not get involved in the business.
That's crazy.
They sometimes will offer guys fights, and the manager will turn the fight down, and the fighter didn't even know
that the opportunity came.
Exactly, that we offered
this
fight to them. Yeah. How you could let somebody else have that much control and decision-making over your life is batshit nuts.
But yet every one of us is in a marketing business somehow.
Right.
Even if you're sweeping streets, You have to market yourself to your supervisor to get ahead.
100%.
So to think that these fighters would have the discipline you do, but never focus on building their brand.
It's crazy.
And when their brand is powerful and they have a big audience and a big following, you're much more inclined to talk with them, negotiate with them. They're an asset.
They make more money, 100%. And think about when they retire. So when you retire from fighting, your goal during fighting should be to do as many great things as you possibly can in front of as many people as you possibly can.
So build a brand.
Exactly. So the world knows who you are when you retire.
Look at Shaq, for example, all the commercials that Shaq is doing on
Unbelievable.
TV now.
And actually, Shaq is with a guy. His guy is Perry Rogers, who went to high school with Lorenzo and I. And, he's brilliant. And look at what him and Shaq have done together. Plus, there's so much stuff that you don't even know about Shaq that he's invested in, restaurants that he owns that you wouldn't even know. It's incredible.
And he's built a brand
100%.
that lives long past him holding a basketball.
But he's also one of the rare standouts that has an incredible personality. He's funny. He's lovable. You don't like Shaq. You love Shaq. He's
absolutely.
just,
Nobody doesn't.
He's got that gift.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about doing a marketing class for your fighters? How to brand yourself? How to market yourself?
We have, yeah. So
Did they come?
Yeah. The fighters came. We cover everything from paying your taxes to social media and all that stuff.
So you protect them in a sense.
We do the best we can. What you can't do is you can't get out there and actually, try to help these guys control their money, because you can never tell a grown man or woman what to do with their own money.
Right.
And one of the problems with being young, famous, and successful is you think that it's never going to end. This money's just going to keep running in because I'm never going to not be great. I'm always going to be great because you believe in yourself. And then the day comes when,
dries up.
Father Time comes knocking at your door and it's over. And you're like, wow, I wish I didn't blow all that money.
Yep. You had a vision for mixed martial arts that few people had. So when you came here and got involved in UFC or MMA, right? Mixed martial arts, did you have this vision that it would get to this point? Because you've changed the sport a lot over the years in rules and the way you've put it together. Was this your vision or did it evolve?
If you look at interviews with me, 15 years ago, I was saying that this is going to be the biggest sport in the world and that this thing would be global. And I always had this philosophy that I truly believed in, and thank God the Fertitta brothers believed in it too. I don't care what color you are, what country you come from, or what language you speak. We're all human beings. Fighting's in our DNA. We get it and we like it. Fighting doesn't have to be explained. I've laid in bed, in England at night watching cricket. Can't figure it out. I'm never going to figure out cricket, okay? And cricket's never going to be big in the United States. We don't grow up playing it. We don't understand the rules. But fighting, exactly. It can be in any language. It can be anything. We get it. We've growing up in school. We saw fights in school. We saw fights here. And if you think about the most famous athletes or human beings to ever walk the face of the earth, they've always been fighters.
Ali, of course.
Look at Ali, known globally, right? Holyfield, Tyson, right? Manny Pacquiao, this little guy from the Philippines. The world knows Manny Pacquiao. Bruce Lee. Oh, kids still know who Bruce Lee is today. He died in the early 70s. We are fascinated by who the toughest people in the world are.
So let me take it a step further. So aren't we fascinated by the whole premise of conquest?
Yes, we are. We are.
So the moment in hockey where there's that check, wham! Right, that's that conquest.
It's true.
So that conflict of humanity.
Well, even in hockey, fights are the most favorite
and the biggest tackle.
It's what people like the most.
Of course,
the biggest hits.
So in my show Bar Rescue, it's the same thing. It's the struggle of the mental conquest. Right? Who's going to win between us? So, do you bring your competitiveness to the negotiating table?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I it's funny because as successful as this company is, as big as the UFC is today, we battle every day. We go to war every day that I walk into this building. We're in a huge war right now with DirecTV. Yeah, we go to war every day. It's crazy. And the bigger you become and, the more successful you become, the more you have to fight.
Yeah, it's not easier. It's almost tougher.
100%
Right, 'cause
tougher.
there's more people against you. So
I just said that in the other room too. I said, when we were just in this meeting, I said, it's crazy the amount of people that come at you on a daily basis in this business.
well, the bigger you are, the bigger of a magnet you are
Insane.
to draw that kind of stuff. It's
True.
crazy. Man, Dana's unbelievable. I think about Dave Portnoy. What a guy. I think about Rick Harrison. What vision and commitment. He worked so hard to get where he is. I think of Daniel Negreanu getting his ass kicked and going back to Toronto with his tail between his legs after his first loss and having the courage to raise and borrow money and come back and do it again. And I think of Sway. And when MTV ended, man, he had to be bummed. Holy shit, what am I going to do now? I'm screwed. But nope, not Sway. Sway figured out a way to exploit that moment and turn it into something powerful when most of his peers drifted away to nowhere. And then look at Dana White, who took a small enterprise and turned it into a global powerhouse. What are the common denominators of all of them? Well, certainly confidence is a common denominator amongst all of them because they had to have the confidence to try. All of them had knowledge, didn't they? Rick wasn't ignorant.
Yeah.
Dave wasn't ignorant. Daniel's not ignorant. Sway's certainly not ignorant, and neither is Dana. So they all had knowledge. They all had confidence. But there was one thing that every one of them did that I wonder if you're going to do. They got off their asses and they made it happen. They didn't allow people to throw excuses. They didn't allow people to say, no, it'll never happen. They fought through it regardless of what anyone said. So if you have your dreams and you have your goals and you have your passions, you need the knowledge. Get the knowledge so you can really believe in yourself and you can take your life to the promised land, just like Dave, Rick, Daniel, Sway, and Dana did. That's the lesson from this podcast, is being a winner isn't natural. Being a winner is purposeful. Being a winner is deliberate. If you wake up in the morning and you fight for it, it'll happen. Look at me. I fought for it, and it happened for me just like it happened for the other people we talked to in this podcast. So this concludes my podcast of winners. And we're entering the summertime. Pandemic is ending, guys. Restaurants are full. Hotels are filling up again. The roads are busy. It's an exciting time. People are looking to spend money now. They're out in the marketplace. This is the time when dreams can come true. When economies come to life like this, and there's passion in the marketplace, and people are excited about living again like we are now, that's the time to be passionate about something. That's the time to really chase your dreams. That's what I wanted this podcast to be about. Dave did it, Rick did it, Daniel did it, Sway did it, and Dana did it. You can do it too. Talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye. Hey, no freaking excuses. Don't shut this podcast down. Click here to subscribe or click here to watch more. But do it.